In this video, we will be going over checkpoint 130, providing descriptive headings. We must ensure that the web page we are evaluating contains heading elements and that those headings are clear and descriptive. Why must web pages contain clear and descriptive heading elements? As you may recall from an earlier checkpoint, heading elements help lay out the information on a web page. They need to be descriptive and clear to provide users with an overview of the content and its organization on a web page. For example, the page contains information about plant foods that humans eat, and two of these types of foods are fruits and vegetables. So if I wanted to read about vegetables, I would check the information under the section titled Vegetables. It's pretty easy to understand why pages should contain descriptive headers. Without them, navigating through the information may be a bit difficult since you wouldn't be able to identify sections. While most users may simply need descriptive headings so that they can skim through a web page to locate specific content, those who rely on assistive technologies must also be able to do the same. Therefore, heading elements must be used to aid in navigation. What tool can we use to check each heading element on a web page? We can use the Wave tool to identify the heading elements within a web page. Look for these structural elements icons to find and evaluate headers. Let's now check the heading elements on the Headhunter Hairstyling website. We can already see here that the text which reads Headhunter Hairstyling is the first header of the page. Since the contents of the web page are about this company, then it would make more sense for the text to be the first header. The text that reads Attention Hairstylist is the next header on the page. This header is descriptive, however, since screen readers label out the heading levels to the user, this can be quite confusing when users are trying to organize the content of the page, and they hear that this is the 6th heading level. The section here is another issue as it does not contain a header, even though the text that reads, "Thank you for visiting Headhunter Hairstyling" appears to be a header. This would not inform users using screen readers that this information is towards past visitors. The section header is also not quite clear since it doesn't really describe the information found in the paragraph below. Based on these errors found, we can conclude that this website would fail the checkpoint. On the evaluation worksheet, after checking to see if the website contains clear and descriptive heading elements, determine whether it passes or fails the checkpoint. In the first example, we noted that the Headhunter Hairstyling website did not pass the checkpoint because the heading elements were incorrectly used and the first header was labeled H2. Also, the text reading "Thank you for visiting Headhunter Hairstyling" acted as a header but was not labeled with an element. Let's take a look at the W3C website, which contains descriptive and clear section headers. You can see that each section has a header to provide the user with an idea of the content within the paragraph. For example, this section under description provides me with more information about checkpoint H42. It's also good to point out that the headers are all unique, thus we will say that this website passes. On the evaluation worksheet, we note that the W3C website passed the checkpoint because it used the heading elements correctly and all headers were clear and descriptive.
Checkpoint H33, supplementing link text with title attribute. In this checkpoint, we will determine if the link element can indicate that it will open a modal window. It is important to always pair links with a text that states the purpose of it. Give a pass, fail, or any grade. Include comments as your reasoning on the evaluation worksheet. Let's look at an example to understand link elements. In this checkpoint, we will check the source code in order to verify that the link describes the purpose of it. Here we have a link in the code. Below it is the title of the link, which provides a sufficient description of what the link is. The title communicates to us that this link is about failed elephant evacuation. Let's go over the step of this checkpoint. Remember that we are checking for link elements that indicates it will open a modal window. Step 1. Examine the source code for anchor elements. For each anchor element that has a title attribute, check that the title attribute, together with the link text, describes the purpose of the link. Use Wave and Andy for this checkpoint. Let's take a look at this Reddit website. Notice how there is an element that activates a modal window. This modal window prompts the user to log into their account by inputting the username and password. We will check for the appropriate ARIA labels using Wave. As you can see, Wave identified that the label as an ARIA button that triggers the modal window to log in. We will now check the source code for a link description. We can activate Andy to search for the specific login button. We can filter by links and buttons in order to search for the modal window. Here we can see the link. As I search for the login modal window, I am unable to locate its elements, and there are no available title attribute within the page source that indicates any information regarding the modal window. Let's fill out the evaluation worksheet. The Reddit login modal window contained the appropriate ARIA label. This was determined by Wave. However, it did not indicate in its title attribute any information regarding the modal window. Therefore, we can conclude that this website fails to meet the full criteria of this checkpoint. We will now look at a failing scenario. The ESPN webpage contains a modal window for login. We will start by using Wave to check for the ARIA labels. After Wave was activated, an ARIA label for the modal window of the ESPN webpage was not found. This fails to indicate its purpose. We can now check the source code for the link elements that describes the modal's window purpose. We can activate Andy to search for the link. We can then filter by links and buttons to search for it. As you can see, there were no correct label links that pertains to the modal window. Let's record this in the evaluation worksheet. The ESPN webpage failed to provide a link element that indicates it will open a modal window. Furthermore, all of the links lacked adequate descriptions upon inspecting the source code. This fails the checkpoint.
In this video, we will be going over ARIA 4 and 5, using WAI ARIA to expose the role and state of the user interface component. For this checkpoint, we will need to ensure that menus with attached submenus use the states ARIA has pop-up and ARIA expanded. If using ARIA expanded, then we need to check if the state changes when opened or closed. Additionally, we must make sure that menu bar, menu, and menu item ARIA roles are not used for website navigation menus. What is ARIA has pop-up and ARIA expanded? When the ARIA has pop-up attribute is used, it indicates a pop-up element that can be triggered by an event. For example, I can open the drop-down menu by clicking on the link. When the ARIA expanded attribute is used, it indicates the current visibility of the pop-up element. For example, right now the menu is collapsed and not visible, but when I click on it, the menu has expanded and is now visible. What are the states for ARIA has pop-up and ARIA expanded? When ARIA has pop-up equals true, this tells the user that a pop-up element exists. You want to make sure that the state for this attribute is true when checking the evaluation. When ARIA expanded equals false, this tells the user an action is required to trigger the pop-up element. Essentially, when the menu is not opened, then the ARIA expanded state is false. When the ARIA expanded state changes to true, then this tells the user an action occurred. When the menu is opened, then the ARIA expanded state should equal true because the pop-up element became visible or expanded. What tools are used to check ARIA? We can use the Wave tool to check if any menus with submenus are labeled with the appropriate ARIA has pop-up and ARIA expanded attributes. The Wave tool will show these icons to indicate that ARIA has pop-up is present. Next, we need to ensure that a screen reader can correctly identify the state of the menu and relay that information to the user. You can either use JAWS or NVDA to help with evaluating the website. Let's now evaluate the Uber menu website to determine if the expandable menus contain the ARIA has pop-up and ARIA expanded labels. You may notice that the navigation menu has several drop-down menus. We can open the Wave tool to see if the appropriate ARIA label is present. As you can see, the Wave icons tell us that ARIA has pop-up is not present. All expandable menus should be labeled with ARIA has pop-up, so as a result, this would be considered a fail. On the evaluation worksheet, after checking if menu link elements use ARIA has pop-up and ARIA expanded to indicate an attached submenu, determine if the website passed or failed. For the Uber menu website, it received a fail, because the collapsible menus on the Uber website did not contain an ARIA has pop-up label. Let's now look at the Reddit website that contains a good example of a menu with ARIA has pop-up and ARIA expanded. On the Wave tool, we can see that ARIA has pop-up is present. We can clearly see that this attribute defines the menu link, which is a drop-down menu. When we click on code, we can check to see if ARIA expanded is also used and if the states are labeled appropriately. As you can see, the HTML code shows that ARIA expanded equals false, which is the default state of the menu when it isn't expanded, and ARIA has pop-up equals true, which will indicate to the screen reader that a pop-up menu is present. If we were to refresh the page and expand one of the menus, we can then open up the Wave tool to see if ARIA Expanded changed state. You'll see this icon here to indicate that ARIA Expanded was found. If we take a look at the code, we will see that ARIA Expanded equals true. Let's now use JAWS Screen Reader to see if the ARIA attributes are registered and if the state of ARIA Expanded changes when we toggle the menu.
User account menu button menu. Enter menu to navigate, press up or down arrow. Night mode, coins, premium, power up, talk, prediction, help set, login / user account menu button menu. Enter, collapsed.
As you heard, the JAWS Screen Reader identified the pop-up menu, mentioned the event that will toggle the menu, and indicated the state when it was collapsed. On the evaluation worksheet, we can write down that the Reddit website passed the checkpoint because the collapsible menu used the ARIA has pop-up label and the state of ARIA Expanded changed when the menu expanded. In this video, we will be going over checkpoint H37, using alt attributes on image elements. To complete this checkpoint, we must determine if alt attributes are short and descriptive. We must also ensure that the images with text have the same text in the alt attribute. We will first answer the question, what is an alt attribute? When applicable, most images contain an alt attribute, which is an alternative text that provides information for an image if the user is unable to view the image. For example, if this image failed to load on the screen, then the alternative text will show. The CSUOB Go Beach sculpture is a short and descriptive text about the image. Next, we will discuss when an image element needs to contain an alt attribute. When looking at images on a website, you must determine if the image conveys meaning. In this example, we can see that these images shown on the webpage are simply used for decorative purposes, meaning that the images simply add to the website's aesthetics. They don't necessarily add meaning to the information shown on the webpage. When these images are solely meant for decorative purposes, it is okay for them to include a blank alt attribute. In another example, we can see here that this image provides information for the user in text. It answers a question that users may have when reading the information presented on the web page. Since this image conveys meaning, it must contain a short and descriptive alt attribute. It should also be noted that some images that contain text captions should not produce a redundant alternative text. In other words, the alternative text should not reiterate what is already mentioned in the text caption. What tools are used to check for alt attributes? We can use the Wave tool to determine if the alternative text is present on the web page. Error icons will alert you when an alt text is missing for any image. You can also check to see if there are any suspicious alternative text under the alert section. You can also determine if alt attributes are misused by checking the features icons to identify images with alternative text that needs to be reviewed. We will now be evaluating the Long Beach Athletics Network website to determine if it passes the checkpoint. First, we must check to see if the images contain short and descriptive alt attributes. Let's load up the Wave evaluation tool to check for any errors. Once the icons appear, you can see a few images showing some sort of error. Here, this image is showing that it's missing an alternative text. This error only appears when an alt attribute is not present within the HTML code. If we check the details of the errors found by the Wave tool, you can see that all of these images do not contain an alt attribute. Therefore, we will conclude that the Long Beach Athletics website does not pass the test. On the evaluation worksheet, after determining if alt attributes are short and descriptive, conclude whether the website passed or failed. On the Long Beach Athletics website, we concluded that the site failed the test. As we saw, a majority of the images on the Long Beach Athletics website did not possess an alt attribute. Let's now look at a website that provides alt attributes for each image correctly. On the Shark Lab webpage, we can see here that this image of the NGSS design badge includes an alternative text that has the title of the awarded learning module, Understanding White Sharks. Over here, this image includes an alt attribute with text that reads Shark Shack and staff. This picture is not a decorative image because it conveys meaning to the above text describing the Shark Shack. If we scroll down, we can also see that there is an image of a PDF that contains an alternative text of the title, Perceptions of Wildlife and Beach Safety. Overall, these are great examples of what you should look for when determining if alt attributes provide short and descriptive text about the images shown. On the evaluation worksheet, we can say that the Shark Lab website passed the test because all of the images on the site had short and descriptive alt attributes. We will now determine if images with text include the same text in the alt attribute. We will evaluate the OC Public Library's website to see if the images with text are labeled appropriately. If we were to go under Details and check the Alert section, we will see that Wave found a couple of suspicious alternative text. If we click on the icon, we are redirected to this logo for the County of Orange. As you can see, this image has an alternative text that reads logo, which is not very descriptive. It should at least specify what type of logo, and in this case, since there is text, it should have included County of Orange, California in the alt attribute. On the evaluation worksheet, after checking to see if images with text have the same text in the alt attribute, determine whether the website passed or failed. On the OC Public Library's website, we can say that the site failed the test. As we noted earlier, the alt text for the image depicting the Orange County seal did not have the text seen within the image. We can see an example of an alt attribute containing the text from an image on this website shown here. As you can see, the alternative text for the image of the Japanese garden logo may not 100% match the text, but it does provide enough to convey its meaning. It reads Earl Burns Miller, Japanese Garden, CSUOB. Going back to the evaluation worksheet, we can write that the Japanese Garden website passed the test because the alternative text for the Japanese Garden logo image sufficiently provided a description that conveys the meaning of the text within the image.